We're really looking at the issue of boys' education as well.
That's a big thing I've been looking at for 2 decades. All the kids, all the boys I've worked with for 2 decades on the streets, trying to keep out of crime, trying to improve their lives, 98% of them have either failed at education or are failing at education.
Yes, yeah, and there's a big question over whether schools are properly set up for young boys. I mean, it's only a 200, like, formal education is only 200 years old, roughly speaking. And to think that we've actually cracked that nut is quite, it would be quite the assumption. I was listening to a very interesting podcast on modern wisdom recently, and it suggested that what's actually happened is that as we've removed barriers for women to be educated, we've actually found that they are more suited to the classroom environment than boys are. And a really interesting statistic was that to have the self-control of an 8-year-old girl, guess what age you'd have to be as a boy to have the same control as, I think it was an 11-year-old girl. Oh, very good, 25. Yeah, which is quite astonishing, really. So it looks like boys are falling behind in their attainment because they are just slower to develop in that particular realm. They are developing very rapidly in different realms, of course, but the particular realm that's cherished by a structured school society it's just not working out for them, or for many of them.
Let me push back a little bit there, because I don't think it's that they're not able to compete in those classrooms. It's the fact that over the last 50 years, our education system has completely changed. Our education system now is designed by women, run by women, for the benefit of girls. And we see that through primary school, secondary school, and university. The whole idea about state education, and I'll argue this with people all the time, was to prepare young people for a working life. And somewhere along the lines, it changed, and now it's education by itself is wonderful. Got nothing to do with going out and earning a living and being self-sufficient. It's now about learning is itself the reward of being in school. And I can see some points of that, but for me, complete rubbish. I don't care if you enjoy school or not. I want it to prepare you for the real world out there, so you can get a job, earn your own money, and be a man, be a woman, and survive by yourself. And the reason why the education system has changed is not only because it's run by women, but it's also the mentality there as well. So we have lots of women who, from all over the world now, India, everywhere, who go to university, get a good degree, and then do nothing with it because it was just something to do. And that's what our education system has become, something to do. The boys I work with can't sit still in the class for 6-7 hours a day learning. They want to be up, they want to be doing things. We need a whole new set of schools, especially for boys, where they're up, they're doing practical stuff, they're working with their hands, they're training for a career, an apprenticeship, not wait until they're 16, 17. I'm talking about from 11 onwards. We're letting a whole generation of boys down because we're treating them like girls. We're criticizing them for not being like girls, and then we also then shame them for failing in life. And it's because the system's set up for girls and not boys.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that there's anything nefarious or anything intentional about it. I think it's just the way it's fallen into this pattern, of course, because the number of male school teachers has fallen right off a cliff. Women mothers have a different parenting style than fathers. Women are much more protective. They don't want to see people hurt themselves. Fathers tend to want to see their children taking on risks and developing new, sort of challenging themselves in a physical sense. And I think that has boiled down as the teaching profession has become more feminine. The restriction on rough and tumble play has come down a lot more. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, we used to play, mugger ball. There's something like 30 or 40 kids, one ball, and lots of ripped shirts, lots of mud, lots of mud in the face, and you're bruising and cuts and everything, and it was good fun. It was a riot. But then I found that ADHD, a good thing to work against ADHD, is rough and tumble play. That actually sort of seems to have some positive effect in minimizing ADHD. So it was seen as the profession has feminized, ADHD increments has come up.
And that's if ADHD actually exists, because the medical community are still out on this. I think a lot of these new syndromes we have now is about placing a label on children, especially boys. So you can't behave in class. So it's either your parents' fault, your fault, or let's find a label so it's no one's fault. Oh, you've got ADHD. The truth behind it is you're probably poorly brought up, or that environment is not for you, where you've got excess energy as a boy. You need to burn that off. You need to be competing with other boys. You need to be working out your social standing in this group of boys, not sat there going, let's be kind. And is it time for a group hug yet?
Yeah,
boys,
put your hand up.
They're not girls. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And boys there was an interesting stat I saw the other day that boys tend to get into paper. Boys, they have fights, they end up friends. Girls, they have fights, they're enemies forever.
Forever, yeah.
But boys will have fights, and the most common outcome is that they'll be friends. So it's just,
and that's because
they're just different.
Historically,
we're just different.
When you have a fight with another male, you have to become friends, because for two reasons. This first reason is, if he's defeated you, that means he can kill you the next time, so you better watch out. And the second reason is, I want him by my side when the evil horde's at the gate of our village.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's probably a lot of different reasons. But I just, it's obvious and makes sense. It's just nice that someone's done a paper on it. But it's stuff that I mean, have you got kids, Eric? Yourself? No. Okay. Well, I've had.
But I've worked with 20,000.
Yes. Yeah. But I've had daughters as well as sons, and they're just different. And there are elements that that you like about each of them, but it's a different way of being, if you like, a different way of being human.
Well, here's an example. So I work mainly with antisocial children or dysfunctional children on the streets. So if we have an extremely dysfunctional young man, 15 years old, and we have an equally dysfunctional girl at 15 years old, the girl is a lot easier to fix and to get progression down a path. And the reason is, doesn't matter how dysfunctional she is, she has much better communication skills.
Ah, yes, yeah. And there's also something that I said to someone else earlier, which is, if you're a man and you run into a room screaming, if you're say sitting there with your 5-year-old kid,
yeah.
A man runs into the room screaming, your instinct is to protect the child.
Yeah, he's a threat.
If you're sitting in the room and a woman comes in screaming,
yeah.
Your instinct is to go up and help the woman,
protect her, because she's obviously a victim. Yeah.
She's less likely to kill you.
But we perceive her as a victim.
Yeah.
We don't perceive men as victims.
So if you come across a man in distress, the institutions, a society, will always treat it with suspicion, because first of all, they've got to work out whether he's a threat, and then, if he's not a threat, maybe we'll help you something. But usually, if he's not a threat, we'll go away then. We don't have to deal with you because we've got all these threats to deal with. It's a difficult thing for boys growing up, that they are given all these. They are required socially now to behave so much more like girls, but they're given none of the leeway for acting out. And
well, I think they have to act more like girls and women, because that's all they see. Because education is run by women, So many come from single parent households, which means the mum. And no, a lot of the boys I work with have no idea what it is to be a man, to to know you've got to take responsibility, go out to work, be a protector. They're just copying what they see, and what they see is a female world, and it's destroying many of them. Hence why they turn to gangs, turn to violence, because it's a way of them expressing their masculinity, which isn't toxic, by the way. But they need to get these things out of them, so therefore they turn to the gang members, because suddenly they're in that male environment where there's a pecking order and there's consequences when you misbehave. And young men crave that. All children crave rules and boundaries so they know where they are in life.
Especially if it's framed in sort of like this masculine concept of sacrifice. The military is so good for children, and I really, well, for boys especially.
Well, we used to have the scouts, but now the scouts is boys and girls. They ruined the scouts. Every time men find something for themselves to be men, women have to invade it with cries of equality. It's like, can we not have anything for ourselves? You've seen the projects of Men in Sheds. Some of them now are being invaded by women. And it's like, can we not have any space where men can just be men, where we can pick our nose and fart and tell without women being there?
Especially the banter side of it. Like, because so much of male communication is taking the piss out of each other, being totally offensive, like horrendously offensive. I can think of some of the conversations we had as children, as teenagers.
And all that now's a hate crime. Men can't do what they need to do because it's a hate crime. It's absolute. I don't know where the solutions to all this comes from. I really don't know where the change comes from.
Well, it's to circle back onto the education issue and how we do that. I think we've got to. That is a really tough nut to crack, because the school system is actually it's well set up to be a feminine person, and whether you're a boy or a girl, if you're if you're inclined towards those feminine attributes, you'll find school easier. What do we do about that? That's a big question. One thing that's been put up is that you start boys a year later in school, and so they're just a little bit more mature, a little bit more able to.
Again, that's punishing boys again for being boys. What we need a whole new raft of schools, whole new raft of secondary schools.
Like not co-ed or
no, again, can be co-ed, but they're more technical schools. So you do English and maths, but then all the other lessons are more technical, bricklaying, coding, a lot more lessons that are stood up, doing activities, a lot more teamwork, a lot more bonding, a lot more pecking order of where you fit in. And we get those children ready for a working life, because 18% of kids in England leave school and have failed education, don't have the minimum requirements of an education. 18%, that's 1 in 5.
And that's across both sexes, is it?
No, there's some girls in there, but it's heavily boys. But we failed them. After 11 years of education, we've failed them, and they need a different type of education. So let's keep the education we got, because it benefits girls, it'll benefit some boys, great. I don't want to disadvantage girls, but let's build something new for the boys that will fail that type of education.
Well, there is that, and certainly the technical skills, good qualified technical people are the backbone of the economy, basically. It's very important to have them. But also, I was thinking more on the primary school level, having more opportunity for rough and tumble play and for activities like that, where they can get out, less pressure on schools to not have any injuries, just more accepting that there's going to be a couple of injuries, because boys will be boys, and they'll be pushing themselves.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a school governor at primary school, and every quarter we'd get a report of bullying incidents. So it's not even as safe as the rough and tumble play, but you know, we were getting bullying reports. Someone said something nasty to somebody. Someone did this. Someone pushed someone, and it's like these are the skills children need to learn to solve themselves, not be running to teachers. The whole setup, like I say, is over feminized.